Hello, stars. My name is Blue, and today we are lost in Homestuck Epilogue Candy, Chapter 6. Let's get into it. No one is answering the door to Jake's mansion, so Jane lets herself in. There is almost no crime on Earthsea, and so almost no one locks their door. In fact, most doors do not have locks, which has been terribly unfair to the struggling locksmith industry. Like, crime or not, do people not value their privacy? At least have a lock for your privacy. Once, at John's 18th birthday, Dave Schroeder engaged Jane in a shockingly aggressive debate about economy in which he accused her of supporting neoliberal corporate welfare for pointing out this exact problem, which was, well, such a baffling incident that Jane is still thinking about it at absolutely random intervals 5 years later. She has an honorary business degree from almost every university on the planet. Dave hasn't even finished middle school. What does he know about the effective and ethical rigors of corporate bailouts? Jane, that's classist. You don't have to have a high education to know your shit. Well, Jane thinks with a heavy sigh. Now that she's not running for president, it doesn't really matter, does it? Jake? Jane feels like a princess in an animated film with the way her voice echoes up 3 flights of circular stairs. The mansion is dark and cramped. Tall, narrow halls, gothic arches, rooms stuffed in all corners with kitschy junk. Jake has a taste for velvet paintings and faux antique candelabras, which mesh less than harmlessly with the backdrop of his paisley wallpaper. Blue light filters in from the stained glass windows on the top of the foyer, where depictions of cerulean sirens lounge against surprisingly tasteful, modernist backdrops. Jane calls his name again, lifting her skirt so she can climb the stairs one step at a time. From the 2nd floor, she hears a sudden and awful noise. Boots scrabbling against wood, glass shattering, hard objects hitting the wall, and the unmistakable roar of a rifle firing. She sprints the rest of the staircase and runs down the hall, clack, 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 in her expensive but understated kitten heels. Jake, where are you? The big oak door at the end of the hallway swings open, spilling orange lamplight into the darkness. Jake steps out, looking ruffled but handsome in corduroy shorts and a dress shirt, buttoned up to mid-sternum. There's a smudge of gunpowder on his cheek. His whole face lights up when he sees Jane. Oh, Jane, how unexpected. Are you alright? What? Of course, why wouldn't I be? I heard a horrible noise. What was all that racket? Oh, this? Jake grins and holds up his rifle, which is still smoking from the muzzle. Just a little morning target practice. He kicks the door all the way open behind him to show what's up. A circular sitting room festooned with Christmas lights and paper targets, all of which look as if they have been hit many times with a bullet. There is a BattleBot hanging out by the fireplace at the back, holding an armful of bottles surrounded by a sea of broken glass. You do this inside the house? He looks at her like she's the stupid one. Well, of course, Jane. Where else would I do it? Bringing this operation outside would only startle the neighbors. As if it wouldn't startle the neighbors from inside. Jake, what? Jane's mouth opens and then hangs there for a moment as she decides whether or not this particular conversation on household propriety is worth having. Sometimes Jake simply cannot be blamed for the foolish things he does. After all, he literally grew up in the woods. Instead, she enters the room and takes a seat in one of the ostentatiously cushioned beige chairs, careful to step around the puddles of cracked glass. I must ask, Jane. It seems that you are rather frazzled. Are you sure you aren't the one who's not alright? Jane rests her temple on her palm. Jake grabs another of his ridiculously fake Victorian chairs by the back and swivels it around so he's sitting across from her. Have you talked to Dirk lately? Not exactly. I would say that I have been talked to by Dirk, but the communique has certainly not been two-sided. Ah, yes. It seems that we're in the same boat, then. I haven't heard from him. I stopped by his workshop, but it was locked. If he was in there, he wouldn't come out. Dirk was the one person on Earthsea who took the state of the locksmith industry with the seriousness it deserves. Jake scoffs and flops the hand. Both actions are dismissive. I don't see what all the ruckus is. Our good chum Dirk fancies himself a dark and tortured soul. Cutting us off is not entirely out of his wheelhouse. Yes, but not like this. It's been years since he's done a full blackout on us. Oh, I'm terribly worried. You worry far too much, Jane. Life has become so peaceable on this new planet of ours. I suppose Dirk has merely tired of this idyllic life. It has either driven him permanently or temporarily insane. That's my theory, at least. Maybe it's Tommy Root, but I have faith that Dirk will be back. After all, where is he going to go? You seem rather cavalier about this. Like, even more cavalier than you usually are. Jake laughs, all uneven, and runs a hand through his attractively tousled hair. I must admit, I am rather half-rats at the moment. You're what? Sorry, that was a pretty obtuse way of putting it, wasn't it? What I mean to say is that I've been powdering my hair quite a bit today. He makes a motion like knocking back the bottle. Jane side-eyes the idling battle-bot, flush with empty wine bottles, then side-eyes Jake. First thing in the morning? Well, I needed the bottles for my target practice, Jane. I couldn't just pour wine down the drain. That'd be a waste. Jane frowns and lays forward on her knees so that she can examine Jake more closely. She sees it now. The unspecifically precise movement that comes from overcorrecting joking body language. The unfocus of the eyes. That was a very detailed thesis he had on Dirk's potential psychology. Almost like he had been given it a good think. She knew that Jake and Dirk were not officially together and had not been for some time, but their lives were inexorably entwined on basically every level for some reason she did not understand. One might even say codependently. No matter what he said, this had to be affecting him as well. Jane lets out a fluttering breath. You know what, Jake? You're right. It really would be a waste. She pushes out of the chair and goes to retrieve one of the unopened wine bottles sitting over the fireplace. They're all screw-chopped because Jake isn't that classy. In fact, he isn't classy at all. His veneer of classiness is about as authentic as an off-brand Halloween mask. Jane has no idea why she can't get him out of her system. Even after all these years, you were very classist. She braces herself on the mantel and knocks her head back, taking a long, uninterrupted swig right from the bottle. Jeepers, Jane, slow down! Jane keeps gulping. She drinks until she can't stand, then breaks off, shaking her head and letting out an ungraceful hiss. Golly, this is a cheap marlet. Her vision is already swimming. Spilling a bit of wine on herself, she spins around to stare at the silent battlebot. It's got its hand out, waiting for her to hand over the bottle. Could you leave us alone, please? The battlebot tips its head at her with a click whirl, then looks at Jake, who, traitorously, offers exactly zero backup. Dejectedly, the battlebot shuffles its way out of the room, but not before dropping every single one of the bottles it was holding, so that they make as much noise as possible when hitting the floor. It slams the door behind him. Ah, yes, Jane thinks. Scorched earth policy. That robot was indeed programmed by Dirk Strider. It is petty, and I love it. Jake is staring at Jane, wide-eyed behind his spectacles. Jane, I must ask again. Are you quite alright? Actually, no. I am quite not. I will say, you really seem like you've got the morbs. She staggers back to her seat and takes another swig of disgusting wine. I canceled my presidential bid. What? I was under the impression that you were awfully chuffed about that. I was so incredibly chuffed about it, Jake. But Dirk called me just before his disappearance and told me to cancel everything. And so... Jane puts her face in her hand miserably. I canceled everything. Why, Jane, do you really need Dirk to run for president? I know he has set himself up as your plenipotentiary, but it seems to me that you have everything you need to win the day without him. Jane looks up at Jake from between her fingers and under her bangs. Well, yes, I suppose that I could run a successful presidential campaign on my own merits, especially since Dirk and I developed most of our strategy together. But now that I've pulled out, I can't just go back and tell them that I've changed my mind. That would be so embarrassing. It would make me look wishy-washy. I can see the headlines now calling me a terminal flip-flopper. Also, it somehow doesn't seem right without Dirk. Jake pries the wine bottle from her hand gently. He takes a drink from it, less gently. Dirk has the manner about him, does he not? A way about him that makes you feel like whatever you do, as long as it does not involve him, doesn't count for Dick. He sounds a little bitter? Jane blinks at him. I hadn't thought about it that way. But yes, ever since I talked to him, I have felt strange. Her whole body is numb and floaty. Sure, she chugged the wine. But it's strange to have gotten drunk so fast, isn't it? Especially since she spends several nights a month drinking much harder and fancier drinks at investor dinners. Jake passes the bottle back. She takes another drink. Strange how? Strange like you just explained. Like nothing I do matters. I should be more upset that I've spoiled my chance at running for president, but for some reason I find myself not really caring. And that's what I'm actually so upset about. The fact that I don't care. Instead... When did Jake scoot his chair closer? They're sitting packed so tight now that his bare knees are brushing against hers. The air between them is warm and wine-soaked. No drunk sex, please. Jane takes another serious look at him, at his elegant jawline, his dark lashes, his handsome nose. It really is unfair that he's so good-looking while also being so Jake. But this is nice, she thinks. When was the last time they talked? Really talked? It's been such a long time that she's almost surprised how good he's being to her right now, considering that she just walked in on him in peak English disaster mode. Was it always this easy to talk to him? Maybe because of the wine, and maybe just because she wants to. Jane reaches out and sets a hand on his thigh. She leans in closer until she can feel his breath on her face. Oh, this is mortifying to admit. But I've been thinking that perhaps I've been doing the wrong thing in my life. Instead of all this business politicking I've been doing, what I'd really like is to settle down and raise a family. Does that sound ridiculous? Why, that doesn't sound ridiculous at all. It's just that I've never heard you express such sentiments before. Except, of course, for that time when you were under mind control and had me trussed up in your lair as you pontificated villainously about using me as a breeding stud to create a blood lineage for your incumbent corporate space empire. Oh, you still remember that. Jane, you're one of my most cherished friends. I couldn't possibly forget a single moment we spent together, no matter how sexually uncomfortable the situation may have been. Jane feels herself turn red. Why did she think this would be so easy? Jake English was kind of a slut, true, but also their relationship was an emotional minefield. She slides her hand down to cup his knee, rolls her thumb into the dip of the joint there, and tries to remember the drunken advice on matters of seduction Jade had given her once when she was foolish enough to take the weekend off and go on one of her and Jake's expeditions. She can't for the life of her remember the substance of any of her lessons, though. Jake is still staring at her, drunk and enraptured. She ventures deeper into his personal space. Well, Jake, it doesn't always have to be that way. Pitting business first, ignoring the good things in my life, chasing profit. I'm sick of it. I think that I could be loving. I could be a good wife. For the kind of man who needs a good wife in his life. Like, say, an eligible bachelor with 100 empty rooms in his house and no one to help clean them. Who has been recently and mysteriously abandoned by his long-term companion, or whatever he was. Someone handsome and lonely, and who knows me well enough that we need not fear showing each other our less savory sides, such as being drunk at 9 in the morning. Oh, Jake, isn't that a dream? Jake slants close, casting a shadow over his face. His eyes are so green, and they're glittering with naked adoration. For her. It's all for her. He nudges a knuckle under her chin and tips her face towards him. Jane. She shuts her eyes and lets his husky wine breath wash over her face. Instead of kissing her, he says, I say this sincerely as one of your oldest and dearest friends. I hope that you have luck in finding a charming and bricky bloke who, summarily, impregnate you with as much swiftness as possible and be a responsible father for your children. There is nothing for you I want more. Jane's mouth drops open. What was she expecting? But Jake doesn't register her mortification or frustration either. He just keeps smiling and gazing into her eyes, warm and drunk. Well then. With a deep sigh, Jane shoves Jake off of her and stumbles back to where his horrendous tasting wine is stored. She pops open a bottle of Brenny-smelling Moscato and tips it back. This embarrassing encounter isn't going to forget itself. Chapter 7. John's been spending a lot of time with Roxy lately, which also means spending a lot of time with Calliope, which is awkward, but fine. But it also means spending a lot of time with Gamzee, which is awkward and not even remotely fine. John, Roxy, and Calliope are taking a stroll through downtown New Prospect. Gamzee's here too, a couple feet behind John, doing essentially the same thing that the other three are doing, which is walking at a leisurely pace. But he's being so weird about it that you can't really call it strolling. It's more like he's holding court while somehow remaining in motion. Ever since he popped out of that fridge smelling like a sweaty foot, he's been all wise and sage-like. John considers that if he were using those two descriptors out loud, he'd make air quotes while saying them. He'd then say Gamzee's acting almost like a priest, which is a word he would also make air quotes around due to how insanely full of shit John still believes him to be. Roxy and Calliope, however, apparently do not believe him to be full of shit for some reason. Isn't this nice? Huh? Gamzee is leading a line of adoring Carapassians trailing behind him, telling them stupid fake Zen stuff like, you gotta stop to smell the seed fawns, my dudes. Not to be speciest or anything, but the sight is kind of worrying because John knows all too well how susceptible Carapassians are to grassroots populism. He has it on good authority that virtually any smut can blunder into a crowd of them and say a few inspirational words and incite revolutionary fervor amongst the masses. John tries his best to ignore it and walk ahead, but Roxy loops her arm through his and pulls him back. We're here, check it. Where's here? Me and Kelly's fave cafe. It's a nice place. Big oval windows, flowers on all the tables. It's got a French-ish aesthetic. John says ish because everything on Earthsea is kind of ish. Alternian-ish, Durse-ish, Japanese-ish. He'd even describe the sky as being kind of blue-ish. Sometimes it's more of a turquoise than anything, too crisp and bright, like the old Earth sky seen through a pair of tinted novelty glasses. John doesn't mean to be cynical about it, but he guesses that's just the mood he's in. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Calliope insisted on including an unbelievably smelly clown on an otherwise perfectly pleasant stroll. That's it? We're going to a coffee shop? I got out of bed for this. LMAO. Oh, John, you're so funny. No, seriously, Roxy, I mean, I feel like I haven't left my house in years, and with all the stuff that's been going on, like Rose's illness or stuff about the political situation, is it really a good idea for us to be having picnics and going out to coffee shops? Oh, John, don't worry so much about things that you have no control over. Like I said the other day, it's time for us to leave ugly things behind us. Yeah, for real, John. Can't you just enjoy what a beautiful day it is? I know I'm enjoying it, since I get to spend it with you, like I've always been wanting. You have? Yeah, duh. She tugs him against her side and rests her head on his shoulder. She's a bit taller than him in her nice shoes, so it's kind of awkward. Feels uncomfortable to him, and looks more so for her. But he's enjoying the attention. Sort of. He missed her. The way she used to be, when the two of them were close as kids. She's laying it on a little thick for his benefit right now, and while he can appreciate it, it can be difficult to rekindle a friendship after it's gone cold for a while. John wishes the rekindling period would hurry up and end already so they can just go back to shooting the shit like normal. Roxy drags him into the cafe. Kellyope doesn't follow them in, for reasons he can only guess at. He catches a glimpse of her through the window, a little forlorn. Gamzee at her side like a faithful dog. He can't hear what they're saying. Outside, Kellyope clasps her hands and directs a wistful expression through the cafe window. Foot traffic splinting lazily around her and Gamzee as they stand on the busy street. At high noon, her little body cast almost no shadow on the cobble road. What's thinking, sis? You look bummed the fuck out. How can you be feeling down when we be getting all redeemed and shit up in here? Oh, it's just... Can't you see what's happening with Roxy and John? Gamzee stares through the window. Roxy is leaning across the table to dab at the corner of John's mouth with a napkin. John looks very confused because they aren't actually eating anything yet. Gamzee stares at this for a long time, his mouth lolling open as he contemplates what is transpiring with the closest facsimile to wisdom he can muster. He puts one of his huge hands on Kellyope's narrow shoulder, all comforting like, "Oh yeah, for sure, your girl Roxy is all globes deep in that dude's dank nook." Yes, and while I can't say that I didn't see this coming, it's all happening so fast. I thought for sure I'd have more time with her. Would a motherfucker like me to... Gamzee leans in so his face is level with Kellyope's. His grin shows every single one of his teeth. Miraculously, his breath smells worse than his body. Motherfucking do something about it. No, Gamzee, no, please, it's fine. I might be sad, but John has made his choice, and we must all live with the repercussions of that. I'm sure that Roxy will be very happy with him. We're all going to be very, very happy. I truly believe that. Kellyope walks away, looking somewhat less than very, very happy. Gamzee remains standing in front of the cafe, still not entirely convinced that he shouldn't motherfucking do something about it. John notices him there, just outside the window, leering at him and Roxy. His expression is serene, vacant. Kellyope is nowhere to be seen. Hey Roxy. What's up? Gamzee, he's staring at us. And it's kind of creeping me out. Oh, yeah, don't worry about that. He gets stuck like that sometimes. Stuck? All locked out and shit. I think he's got brain damage from being a burnout. It's so sad. Is it? Roxy takes a sip of her tea. Her purple lipstick leaves a stain on the fine china. Yeah, John, it's totes sad. He never had a chance with the kind of life he had. What a tragic, misunderstood figure. Roxy sighs and spears the cherry atop her cheesecake with the absurdly tiny fork it was served with. She pops it in her mouth with a pouty little lip pop, staring directly at John with her eyes half-lidded. He thinks she might be trying to be sexy, but he's a bit distracted by the sight of Gamzee lumbering into the cafe with all the grace of an aubergine Sasquatch sporting an epic erection. It never occurred to me that Gamzee might be wearing his god tier outfit. He puts both hands on the back of Roxy's chair and looms over her. Without breaking eye contact with John, Roxy scoops up a spoonful of cheesecake and feeds it to him. Hey, Roxita. Hey Gams, what's shaking? Callie went all running off. Ugh. Oh, I hope she's feeling alright. She's motherfucking fine. She said some noise about cause of what John did. We're all gonna be one happy family of fucking ninjas for motherfucking ever. What? Which is actually what my brain said after reading that. Gamzee, you're one silly dude. To be honest, pretty psyched to see you going through all this redemption shit. I bet you're gonna make a baller part of our greater ensemble if you're given the chance. John attempts to furtively gesture his disapproval with the entire situation towards Roxy by vaguely swiping his neck in a horizontal fashion with his fingers. But she doesn't notice. Instead, she puts her fork down, slides her chair out, and springs to her feet with an abundance of newfound enthusiasm he's been struggling to understand. BRB, gotta hit the ladies' room. Be back in jiff, suckers. Alright. She really just gonna leave John and Gamzee alone like that when she knows John's uncomfortable? At least I would hope she knows John's uncomfortable. She seems pretty oblivious to everything happening. John and the date's repulsive third wheel watch as she scurries to the back of the establishment. The moment the door to the bathroom closes, Gamzee lumbers into a sitting position across the table from John. Without the slightest deviation in his heinously awkward compartment, he puts his forearms on a table in front of him, folds his hands, and gazes into John's eyes with what he has come to identify as Gamzee's signature brand of faux serenity. My fucking guy. My dude and my ninja alike. My horn dog. My horn to the motherfucking dog. Oh, wink. Waiter, help. John desperately waves to attract some service in hopes that it would provide a social buffer for the appalling interaction that is presently taking place, but no carapacians seem to be close enough to heed his request. I see what's motherfucking up, my good vert brother. All is about I can say is game recognized motherfucking game. You got no secrets from this motherfucker, egg boy. A man stays locked in a motherfucker's hunger trunk long enough. Ain't got much left to fucking hide from another. Actually, that wasn't even my fridge. It was Jane's. And I mean, we've basically got the same Shut the fuck up. I'm getting real at a motherfucker right now. I've been redeemed, yo. I said my stories and redeemed the shit out of myself, didn't you see? Yeah. So it's incumbent on a motherfucker to spread the redemption. You should get your redemption on too, my choicest of dudes. My dankest of dogs. See, a motherfucker knows. You got this bitch on a rope. It's time to pull her into your tent. I can smell it on you, brother. You've wasted years letting this premium hoe slip through your fingers. Less fucking conscionable than any crude stunt I pulled in my day, I must tell you. A capital motherfucking crime to be squandering earth pussy like that. Holy shit! Holy shit indeed! Gamzee! But I'm all getting your back here, bro. I can be your wingman in this carnal fucking caper. I can help a little bitch like you romantically redeem his sorry ass. Let a motherfucker help a motherfucker out. Our popcorn skillet's piping hot for you already. You just need a tight and loyal bro like me to start shoveling in the corn. Thinking it unwise to break contact with this lunatic, John nods very slowly as he listens, while taking a secret snap of his ghoulish face to send to Terezi. Before John submits, he tags a photo with a message. I absolutely fucking hate this. In the first chapter, in our last chapter, Jane tried to get laid. In this chapter, Gamzee's trying to help John get laid. What is happening? I don't like this. I don't like it. But, that's it for today's stories. We're leaving it off right there. If you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already to join our wonderful galaxy. And whatever a mess this series is. Comment down below and I'll get back to you in some way or another, and I'll see you for the next adventure. Remember, we're all made of the same cosmic dust, so be nice. Kate, love you. Bye!